All right. What is going on, everyone? And welcome back to Mets Weekly. We are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X for pre-game coverage, continuing throughout the whole postseason of the Mets versus Dodgers. Game 4 of the National League Championship Series. Now, before we get into all the technicalities going into this game, because I do think there's going to be quite an amount of conversation going into this one, of course, with it being a pivotal game 4. I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel if you had not already for live recordings of the Mets Weekly podcast following every Mets postseason game. For those of you watching live on playback, or you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live. And of course, after tonight's game, we'll be going live for episode number 98 of the Mets Weekly podcast following the game. For those of you in the live chat right now, we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns, everything regarding that game. If you feel like you're being ignored, you're not. You're just being starred throughout the show. And we'll try to pull up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation going. Also, remember to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok for content throughout the offseason over there. And for our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of new podcast episodes that drop at 9 a.m. the following day. I had a little bit of trouble with our audio from last night, which I believe I did. Yeah, I did solo last night. Had a little trouble with that, so went out a little bit later than 9 a.m. So I apologize for that, but I was able to get it out early enough before our show started here, which was my main fear, but it did not happen. But either way, let's move on to our actual reason why we are here, that being Game 4. Let's get into this pre-game show. Let's just say last night, and Frank, you weren't here for the episode last night after the game. Last night, I think the easy way to say this is that was pretty much just a replay of Game 1, but in a different ballpark. Like, that's pretty much how I look at it. What did you think?
There's certainly some similarities, especially from the pitching department and their struggles there. But offensively, I felt that the Mets had a lot more opportunities this time to score compared to Jack Flaherty. I feel like for the most part, they were getting kind of shut down. But here against Bueller, you mentioned on your show, but he didn't really do too much. I mean, he didn't have that great of a game. The broadcast being like, oh, vintage Walker Bueller is back. That wasn't the case.
No,
There
he's
was a
not.
lot of approach issues. There was looking at fastballs over the plate. There was chasing curveballs in the dirt. There was just all the things that you should not be doing on an offensive standpoint. Defensively, there was a lot of things wrong. There was wrong decisions. There was not catching the baseball. And then the pitching department, you're walking batters. You're giving up home runs. So it was one of those things, in my opinion, where every fear that we had about this team, every criticism that we've had about this team all year long, it all showed up in one night. All year during the regular season, we talked about the walk problem. We said, listen, this staff is walking too many batters. You're not always going to be able to get away with it. And against this Dodgers team, overall in this series, they've been walking way too many guys. And I understand there's no Tani and a Betts and a Teoscar. I get it. But overall, some of the guys that are getting these free passes, it just should not be happening. So that has been very frustrating to watch. And then, like you talk about, the boomer bust offense. You know, you get 6 in one inning, and then you don't see him the rest of the night. You don't see him the next day. The inconsistencies, those things really have got to stop. And we talk about approach, not pulling baseballs. I mean, literally every criticism that we've had, lack of maybe middle relief depth. So you have to extend Reed Garrett, go to McGill when you really don't want to. And it puts you out of reach because you don't have enough reliable relievers. So every
Yeah.
single criticism that we had, every concern that we had, all of it showed up in at one time. So it was really rough to watch. It was very frustrating because these are things that should not be happening. Like when baseballs are hit at pitchers that are Gold Glove finalists twice, they should catch them, if not both times, at least one of the times. So, it's just like these things like that that just really shouldn't be happening. And we talk about, approach. If you see a pitch you like, go for it. They take fastballs down the middle and then they swing at stuff in the dirt. So they swing at stuff in the other batter's box. They're just very indecisive. There's check swings. Like they're just like all these things that we've talked about so much that really came back to bite them. And, the not going to left-handed batters, particularly Jesse Winker, we had concerns about that. It sure ended up being right. Jose Iglesias making another start. He is into a double play. I'll get into Alvarez a little bit because I actually do have a lot of thoughts on it and criticisms about his performance. So we'll get into him in a little bit. But I feel like everything that we talked about, like this wasn't a total shock in a sense where it's like this is the first time we saw some of these things happen. Like we've seen this happen in bits and pieces throughout the course of the year. And unfortunately, it just all happened at the wrong time.
Yeah, I mean, the timely hitting, the timely pitching, the timely getting things when you need them, it hasn't really done well. It hasn't boded well at all in this series. And, even though the Mets were able to take game 2, I talked about this in the episode last night, which is now available on audio, even though it took forever to get out, that we had a concern going into this that, yes, the Mets can continue to fight back the way that they can, and they always will. And I'm confident they can win tonight. I'm confident that they can tie this series up going into a game 5. The problem is that you can't keep trading wins with this team. Eventually, they're going to end up winning if this keeps going this pattern. Personally, if they take the Dodgers to game 7 at this pace that it's gone so far, and listen, that we still got tons of series left, you never know. If they end up taking a Dodgers team like this to 7 games and they end up losing in game 7, I'm not going to be too upset. I'm not like, again, like I still, it has succeeded my expectations this season. They definitely have 100%. I'm not one that is going to be very angry. Maybe I'll be a little sad for a little bit, but if they end up getting bested by a Dodgers team that should be besting them because they're better, I'm not really as upset. I'm more of just like bummed out, and then you move on. But when it comes to, some of these technical things that we talked about, Walker Buehler, like I said last night so many times, he was awful last night. He was terrible. Like, I'm not even trying to say this in a way to make the Mets feel good. I'm saying this in the terms of Walker Buehler's not good anymore. Walker Buehler has not been good all year. He was terrible yesterday. He was terrible. He was leaving pitches over the plate. He was putting things over the heart of the plate. He couldn't locate a single breaking pitch for his life. And all the Mets did was bail him out the whole time. That's what we kind of saw them bail out Ranger Suarez in that game. But then Lindor said, okay, you know what? I'm going to bail this entire I'm going to bail out this entire team. And he won us that game. Well, Lindor had the bases loaded this time, and he wasn't even able to bail us out in that regard. Walker Buehler, some of the pitches, and listen, I understand compared to the eye test, he did fine. 4 scoreless innings. He threw 90 pitches last night. 70 of them were non-competitive. I can almost guarantee that. He was terrible. He was so bad yesterday, and they still managed to let him get away. They managed to let him get away completely unscratched. The Mets had their opportunities. They had tons of runners in scoring position, tons of them. And there were tons of other conclusions that I do want to bring past you. Obviously, there is one thing that, again, I do want to talk about, obviously more in the offseason. But I do have a strong feeling, and I'm going to say as a strong feeling from that game. And I said this on the episode last night. So for those of you who are watching and tuning in, and did not see our post game from yesterday, I think that, and this is just like a complete different topic, just basically reflecting off of game 3. I have a strong belief right now, and I don't know, maybe it will change, But I have a strong belief right now that yesterday was the final game you will ever see Tyler McGill pitch in a Mets uniform. I do think that that's the case right now. Yes, the bullpen is shorthanded, but when I look at it, they haven't used him at all throughout this postseason. The only time they have used him is in that one game in the game 2 against Philly, and then today in mop-up duty. They're not going to use him for the rest of this series because he's not going to be available. And even if they get to the World Series, they're most likely going to leave him off of their World Series roster because it's pretty much a dead end when they have guys like, probably Brazaban is a better option than Tyler McGill right now. Doesn't say much. Just saying. They probably trust Ottavino even more than Tyler McGill right now. When it comes to McGill, in regards to him, it was pretty much the same that we saw. And even though it was in a low leverage point, it's the same stuff that we have seen from him forever. 72 pitches in 3 innings. Does that sound familiar? Walking batters, missing location, not putting away batters. It's the same thing. And don't get me wrong, and I said this last night as well, don't get me wrong, wherever he goes, he's going to be a phenomenal pitcher. He's going to be great, but just not here. For some reason, they have not been able to unlock anything with him. He has the stuff. He has the talent. He 100% does. And for those of you who do disagree, first of all, that's your problem because I know ERA high, pitcher bad. But when it comes to Tyler McGill and the ability that he does have and the overall talent he does have, he is going to be a good pitcher if some team is going to find it and apply it. And there are superior pitching development in this league as compared to the Mets. Mets, maybe they'll get there eventually, but he is one of those pieces that needs to be cleared out. And I do think that he is the number one non-tender candidate next year. I think it's easier to say that. I don't know if there's any other feeling that you got from there, but I think that's it. I think that's all you have seen from Tyler McGill in his Mets career.
He's a guy that he's been here for a lot of years now. He's gotten opportunities, whether that be in the rotation in some spots, and he's had good starts. He's had nice moments, but overall, there's been a lot of injury concerns. So, let's not forget that this is a guy that it just always seems like he's missing time at some point. But the other issue is the inconsistencies. So that even though we have had good moments, he gives you a good start and you're like, oh, okay, maybe he's going to get it going. Maybe he found something. And then he goes back to the same bad things of walking and giving up home runs. And like you said, their lack of confidence in him. And they put him in multiple roles. I think that's the other thing too, is that so they showed a lack of confidence by not using him much, not really warming him up. But the times he did come into the games, he wasn't good. So that also does not bode well for how an organization views you. And I felt like this was his last shot in the bullpen role, which is something that we've talked about on this show for years, is like maybe you give him a little bit of an opportunity in the bullpen, see how that goes. Since the starting rotations had volume issues, there's been injury concerns. You give it a shot. His brother's a good reliever. Maybe he could kind of change his arsenal a little bit to be more reliever heavy, more strikeout dominant. And his velo was up last night, but it didn't matter. So that's kind of what we're talking about. It's like, it's not just a simple throw the ball harder and you're going to have more success. There are some changes that do need to be made that the Mets don't really have time to make right now in the National League Championship Series. Now, the other thing is that we talk about he's been here for multiple years. However, he's had the same pitching coach all these years. So if they didn't find something then, they're not going to find something now. So that's why there's a much better chance of, if he goes into a new organization with a fresh set of eyes on him, there's a much likelier opportunity that they could change some things to where he can be effective. But like you said, with where we're at right now, this is a team that did get to a National League Championship Series, regardless of what the results are in this series. If we go further, if we don't go further, you want to try to get past that. Like you want to say, okay, how can we improve? How can we get to that next level? He's not part of that equation. He's not in your playoff rotation. He's not in your playoff bullpen. He's not on your playoff roster. He should not be on your playoff roster next year. So He's just not someone that should be tendered a contract. That money should be given elsewhere to the new starting rotation that you're going to need with all these guys that are going to be free agents. You're going to need new relievers. There are some holes on this lineup that are going to open up that are going to have to be addressed. So you're going to need some money to be allocated in other areas compared to trying to retain Tyler McGill. If anything, you'd want him as starting pitching depth. But with David Stern's regime and with his history, he could find that on minor league contracts. He could find that on much more controllable young pieces that they could actually mold and develop and just do it for a much better price than what they've gotten for McGill so far.
Tons of changes have been made with McGill throughout the years. So many adjustments have been made to keep him healthy, to maintain velocity, to maintain consistency. None of it has worked. You've gotten the same results every single time. So when it comes to, obviously, when we talk about like the money being allocated, he would be making like $800K next year. Like that's like, but so that is where I look at it where, I think he would go into, is it ARB 1 or something? ARB 1 maybe? ARB 2? I forget. He's pre-arbitration right now. This is his last pre-arbitration, I'm going to guess. And then because he's arbitration eligible for 2025. Okay, so it's ARB 1, ARB 2, ARB 3. So he's going into ARB 1. I think this is it. Like, I think that's it. There's no reason to give him any arbitration numbers for him when he just has not shown anything. Like, he just hasn't. And I don't even know
it's again, it's a thing where he'd be on a 1-year deal, and then you're gonna keep giving him raises going forward. Where it's like you could just bring in a new piece that has much more long-term control and try to work with that.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I can, I can, go after the fact of with Tyler McGill, and then there's that other pitcher in David Peterson. What can I even say that hasn't been said already? David Peterson was able to figure something out, and whether I'm saying that it's not going to last or it's not going to sustain, or whether I'm just being like the stickler that I am of David Peterson, he still figured something out. He still gave us somewhat of the value. So he deserves a chance next year. Like with McGill, I mean, this is 4 years now? In and out of the minor leagues? I mean, and listen, don't get me wrong. I do think that he can be a good pitcher. I think he does have talent as compared to other people who believe that he belongs in Hong Kong. Fine. But when it comes to McGill right now, they're not going to find it here. So it's enough already. It really is enough already. And it really is. It's pretty telling with the usage, with how they used him last night, that I was like, okay, yeah, this is it. This is it. He's done. I don't see any reason as to why he would be brought back next year. He would be tendered a contract, especially with arbitration coming up. Now, in terms of like David Peterson, he might get like a big raise next year. And he deserved it. He did a really good job this year. He's one of the main reasons as to why this team has had success. I mean, if you want me to, bag on him at all, I'm not going to, because he's been good. So when it comes to guys like Tyler McGill, it's all just up in the air. Like, what the hell is he going to actually prove to do it? Because, like, you've had Stearns come in now. You've had this whole pitching lab thing. You've had all these adjustments. You have Jeremy Hefner, who has been hit or miss this year. Like, he's been hit or miss. I'm not going to say he's been bad, but he's been hit or miss. I mean, there's products in here that it's time to sweep it out, and that's Tyler McGill. Now, I'm done with that conversation. I do want to talk about it before we get into this game. I do want to talk about this lineup because here's the thing. Like I've said before, I'm satisfied with what they've done this season. So it's possible that if they lose, I'll be a little bit bummed out. When I saw this lineup, I laughed my ass off. And I did laugh my ass off. I love this team so much. Whatever A+ troll put out this lineup, I love you. I would give you a raise, because literally we are seeing Harrison Bader make a postseason start before Jeff McNeil. The Mets are treating Jeff McNeil like I treat Jeff McNeil. That is fantastic. And listen, I understand everybody wants to win. I do as well. I still want them to win. But for as someone who's kind of coasting here where I'm like, okay, I'm not very, very nervous. Like, I know they've exceeded the expectation this year. The Dodgers are a good team. If they end up losing, they end up losing. But then I'm also just like, all of the Jeff McNeil fans who have attacked me over the years for telling the truth about him, I'm just imagining them crying, and it's so beautiful. It is so gorgeous. They have overridden everyone over Jeff McNeil. It took them so long to do that. And before anybody goes after me, for those of you who don't know my shtick with Jeff McNeil, and tell me that I never felt like this before when he won the batting title in 2022. I have wanted him gone since the middle of 2021 when he got into an argument with our $341 million shortstop. So it's been a long time. I haven't changed one bit when it comes to Jeff McNeil. Even when he was at his best in 2022, I still didn't see any reason for him. But right now, it shows that it's like, you have the contract, but is he going to play? Like, this is... Okay. Before I shift it over to you, I think it's hilarious. Okay? I think it's hilarious, and the troll in me loves whoever made this lineup. When I say that this isn't the move, it is not a move. No. Bader should not be starting, absolutely. But to think that Bader is in regard to make changes to this lineup before Jeff McNeil is so great to me. I think it is magical. Okay? I'm sorry. All right? Forgive me for laughing, but it's so funny. And the fact that it's Harrison Bader who, you know, in regards to my co-host here, has not been fond of before they signed him. All I can say is, if Harrison Bader robs a home run from Teoscar Hernandez today, you have no idea how toxic I will be for the rest of this series. They could literally get destroyed. I will absolutely shove it in your face every single chance that it gets. I'm just giving you a warning. So I'll go over to you on this lineup, okay? And I just want to remind you, Harrison Bader is making a start in the postseason before Jeff McNeil ever did.
Acknowledged. Got it. Now, if McNeil was healthy, I think he probably would have got to start earlier, maybe like a Philly series or something. But regardless, Mendoza is being a little foolish here. I've not for McNeil, whatever. But this whole, oh, well, you know what? Yamamoto has reverse splits. He's way worse against righties. That doesn't mean that you start Harrison Bader. Because Harrison Bader was a fraud in May and actually hit well and fooled everybody, including myself. I was like, oh, look at me. I was wrong. I'm so sorry, Harrison Bader. You're this great hitter. How did I miss it? Then all of a sudden he showed who it really was. Because he had a good game against Yamamoto when he was a fraud, that means that he has great career numbers against him, and he's a great matchup. Like, are we just looking at a computer here that just says, oh, who has good career matchups, and enter, and then what lineup came out? Okay, let me go bring that to the umpire. Like, are we serious here? Like, use common sense. Use your brain. Use your eyes. This guy has been bad for 4 months. He's been bad the entire second half, and he hasn't started at all in this postseason. You know why? Because he stinks. He's not a very good hitter. He has been benched for Tyrone Taylor, who's also not a good hitter. I mean, that's how bad Harrison Bader is. Harrison Bader is so bad that he got benched by a guy who isn't that good and is getting paid $10 million less than him and got benched for him. That's how bad Harrison Bader has been. But your solution is with a struggling offense that scored 0 runs yesterday. I know what to do. Let me put my worst hitter into the lineup. That will solve everything. Like, you have to be insane. You actually have to be crazy if that is your line of thinking, that, oh, this is the move to go because he's a right-handed bat. But guess what? Tyrone Taylor also bats right-handed. So you didn't have to do that to get a right-handed bat in the lineup. You didn't have to take Taylor out. And I'm not the biggest fan of Taylor, but man, do I prefer him over Harrison Bader. So I don't get that at all. And then he goes one step further. The gentleman who should be sitting in one of these couches behind me in the retirement home is still in this lineup, and is a guy that, we'll get to Yamamoto, is not a good matchup for Yamamoto. Yamamoto relies on chase. He's going to be throwing curveballs in the dirt, and JD Martinez loves to fish for them. He made Walker Buehler look like vintage Walker Buehler last night, when you had a Jesse Winker on the bench who's a much more patient hitter and would not be chasing and would give you much more productive at-bats. So I understand. I get he wants these right-handed bats, but it's like you and I talk about all the time. There's righty, 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 lefty, lefty, lefty. But then there's also, like, who actually matches up well with their strengths and their weaknesses compared to the pitcher's strengths and weaknesses. And in my opinion, I think that, once again, Jesse Winker is the better call. Also, Jesse Winker has been hitting the ball pretty well this postseason. And it's one of those things where you've benched him now 2 days in a row. So we know that all of a sudden you can kind of lose rhythm. You can kind of lose effectiveness. And now Jesse Winker, when he does come back to the lineup, I think he'll come back to the lineup at some point this series. Now he might not be a little rusty all of a sudden because he hasn't gotten those reps that he was getting consistently. So I don't know why the loyalty to Martinez is here. He's gone, and you said it last night, but at his age, no more JD Martinez. I mean, no more. Yeah. Like, he did his purpose. He had his month or whatever, 2 months. He taught the hitters something. He taught them some stuff, gave them good advice, good mentor. But we're done. Like, goodbye. Thank you for your service. You want to come back as a coach, by all means, but we're done here. So there's no reason to keep him out there. There's nothing to gain from it. He's too old. He's not the same guy. He's not Dodgers JD Martinez. So you can't just do the reverse card on the Dodgers with a Mets JD Martinez. So I just think overall, with how the lineup has been struggling, I just don't think that this was the way to go. It still is just way too similar to the group that's been trotted out there and has had way too many inconsistencies. And I just find that, and that's the other thing too, is that Bader is also a guy who is very chase heavy, and Tyrone Taylor is too. But again, I just don't think that, like, with Bader, I don't think he's a good matchup for Yamamoto either. It's a tough spot for sure because neither one are great options, but I just don't think this was the solution.
Ken saying, did Winker curse out Mendy? I don't know, man. I really don't know. Lane coming in here saying, let's go Mets. Junior Swimman saying, what's up, Frank Carson in the chat? What's going on? And Lane saying the Mets have to win tonight. Absolutely. This is the pivotal game 4. So, I mean, this is huge. Now, of course, I do want to talk about Jose Quintana for a second, because Jose Quintana, we know that this is not a favorable matchup for him, mainly because he does rely on this chase. And I do think there is a way for Jose Quintana to actually have success in this, but it's going to be very, very, it's not going to be easy. It won't be easy. But this lineup that the Dodgers have, that is it's a little bit weaker than its usual lineup. But yet again, I will get into in a second, but Freddie Freeman is not playing. The all-time Mets killer is not playing. Tommy Edman is in cleanup, who has destroyed us this entire series. So I'm not saying that Tommy Edman batting cleanup, maybe that like eases him off and you know, he's red hot right now. Then you also have this bottom part of the lineup where Smith, I'm pretty sure, had like 2 hits yesterday, but they were both like in the infield or whatever, and barely past the infield. Andy Pages or Pages or whatever your name, he's not great. Chris Taylor's been terrible this year. Pages,
one of the worst hitters in baseball. Bad.
Yeah, very bad. So there's definitely a smaller part of competition. I'm not trying to doubt any of these hitters, to be honest. because the Dodgers are a good team and they've had a lot of guys from the bottom of the lineup contribute really well so far in this series. But when it comes to messing up that rhythm, that's where Jose Quintana comes into the mix. He's not going to get that many chases, and I know that the best way to possibly get this Dodgers team out is going to be nibbling around the strike zone. He's most likely going to have to do that today. The contact management is what I'm looking at for Jose Quintana to get outs today. And that's going to be in one of my keys to this game regarding his success to it. The problem being is that last night, the second, no, actually, probably this entire series so far, the defense has been terrible. The defense has just been turning off their brains whenever they want to. Aside from that amazing catch that Tyrone Taylor made, by the way, who was my stud last night, because he basically was the only one who gave us anything to cheer about that entire night. But when it came to, Jose Quintana, it's not a favorable matchup, obviously. And there are some guys in this lineup who do have a really good career against him. One of them being Freddie Freeman, who is now out of the equation. Now I can hit backspace on my notes here. He's out of the equation. So when it comes to Mookie Betts and Will Smith, who actually does have a decent history against him, I do see a way that you can contact manage with a guy like Jose Quintana. The problem is it's going to come out of a cost of nibbling around the strike zone, which sometimes gets Jose Quintana in trouble. He's been on a roll recently. He's been pitching well. He's definitely met his match here during this hot streak that he is on. So, we'll see. Again, Shohei Ohtani has not boded well against lefties so far in this series. Betts hasn't been very loud. Teoscar hasn't done much. So we'll see what happens in regards to that. But I do think there's a way to win this, but a lot needs to go right. And I mean a lot. Not just with Jose Quintana on the mound, but the defense around him as well that needs to be better.
Yes, Quintana, this is an interesting one. I mean, we've had our criticism all year, but he's been money in the postseason. I mean, he's gotten the job done much better than we could have predicted. So he's done really good. So I have to give him the benefit of the doubt. I have to put faith in him. I mean, we need him to do well here. So, like you said, it's a tough matchup, but honestly, the Dodgers are a tough matchup for any pitcher, really. I mean, just with the sheer talent that they have on the field. But a few of the things I'm looking at is number one, with Freddie Freeman being out of the lineup. Freeman is like really banged up. I mean, there's like banged up. There's playing through injury. Like this man could literally barely move. I mean, it is bad. Like if Freddie is not hitting that well against the Mets, there is something very seriously wrong. Like he's just not Freddie Freeman. So that's part of it. Also, facing the left-hander, they're thinking maybe there's at least a day to give Freeman just to see if they could get him off his feet just for a little bit, see if that can get him going, because he just hasn't looked like himself at all, both at the plate and then in the field, like turning that double play. He really had to like hustle to get over there because it's just so hard to move. So that definitely was interesting. But we talk about Edman. He's just kind of been all over with this lineup. They bat him sixth, they bat him ninth. Now he's at full, now he's cleanup. And with the series he's had, it makes sense. And then with Kike, he bats ninth last night. He moves up to 5. And with the game he had, it makes sense. Max Muncy has been almost impossible to get out. I mean, I think he got on like every single time last night. So he's facing the left-hander. But with Muncy, he is so patient at the plate. He drew those multiple walks that, like we said, Quintana, he's going to be trying to nibble around the zone. He's going to be trying to draw some chases. You're not going to get him from Muncy. I feel like he's going to need some luck, in my opinion. I think he's going to need maybe a few favorable umpire calls or maybe just a pitcher's umpire in general, because there are going to be some borderline calls here that could make or break a lot of these at-bats with Quintana's pitching style. He's going to be looking at the bottom half of the zone, And if he gets a strike stolen or two, that will put him in much better counts that maybe you can draw a chase. But if those are balls, then they're really not going to be fishing for anything, and those are going to end up becoming walks. So that's kind of one of the things that needs to go for him. And we know that he's not the biggest strikeout guy in the world, but he has gotten like 5 and 6 strikeouts his past 2 outings. So maybe he'll get some. But like you said, for the most part, the ball is going to be put in play. You do have the immortal Harrison Bader in center field, so that helps out. But like you said, with the defense, there's bad defense as far as like if guys don't have range. But these have been balls hit right at these players that they are just not catching and not doing the right things with. I mean, whether it was Severino, Iglesias in game 2, Vientos that dropped and then put it down, it got back, it was able to make the play, or Alvarez just trying to be Superman and just throwing to the wrong base and being insane. Like there's just bad defense, and then there's like dumb defense. Like we've seen some dumb defense as well. So like it's a matter of in these kind of games, get your outs, get your guaranteed outs, because with this team, more base runners, more opportunities, it gives them just more chances to do damage and hit one over the wall, and it's a 3-run game, and you're done. So you really just got to take the safe outs here. I don't want to see no Superman plays. I don't want to see, let's try to turn this double play. Let's try to make an amazing highlight reel. Get your outs. Just if you have an out, take it, because they don't come easy with a lot of the guys in this lineup. Now, my last thing with Quintana, if I see him walk Chris Taylor, I will have a breakdown. Chris Taylor is one of the worst hitters in baseball. He's not going to hit this postseason. He actually has reverse splits this year, so he's been even worse against lefties. Do not walk Chris Taylor. Do not do it. I don't care if you have to throw it down the middle. Do not walk him, because if he gets on, because we know Ohtani, if Ohtani has the bases empty, he can't get a hit. But if they're on, his stats are maxed out and he's impossible to get out. So do not walk Chris Taylor.
Yeah, no, the worst scenario actually personally wouldn't be walking Chris Taylor. It would be hitting him on a 2-strike, hitting him with 2 strikes. That would be the worst case scenario, I would say. One thing that I am noticing here, and I'm looking at the logs right now, every single hit, every single piece of success that Tommy Edman has had against us so far in this series, all of them have come against fastballs or sinkers. All of them have come against velocity. So, for somebody like Tommy Edman, who has horrible numbers against off-speed pitches and breaking balls, and I mean awful, he's terrible, don't even give him any velocity. And even though velocity is a different thing to talk about regarding Quintana, but like Tommy Edman, average chaser, beyond the discipline that he has, screw him up. Screw up the timing on him. He can't hit any secondary stuff. Why are you even challenging this guy with velocity at this point? You already know that he's just destroyed you. I can't believe I'm talking about Tommy Edman in the middle of the fucking National League Championship Series. He's batting cleanup. That's how amazing he has been. That's how incredible. Ohtani, I ain't even worried about right now. I ain't worried about Betts. Edman is the most scary hitter right now on this fucking team. Believe it or not. And listen, that's a little bit more of an exaggeration, but like Tommy Edman, go away, dude. What are you doing here? Why are you here? Go away. Like, what the hell? Edman and Muncy have been the best hitters in this series for the Dodgers. It's well known right now. So we'll see how Muncy bodes against the lefty. Again, he can screw up the timing a little bit, as opposed to pitchers like Minaya and Severino, or even Senga, who was just all over the place. I didn't even really count that as pitching, what he did in game 1. That was just awful. But when it comes to Tommy Edman, I mean, there's an easy game plan here of how to get him out. So, I mean, they really should be looking at that in regards to that. Now, I know that I did cover it a little bit on the episode last night. But I do want to listen. I don't want to open this can of worms, because I know it can be very frustrating, but you do bring up the defense. We bring up how the defense has been. Last night was a really rough night for Francisco Alvarez. Alvarez. From both sides of the ball, you can't debate it. And I'm just going to ask you straight up. I don't want to spend so much time on this, but when you look at it for, like, do you still feel the exact same about the playing time with Luis Torrens and this way? It just, I'm sorry, like, it's noticeable. It's really noticeable. And I'm not trying to say this as well as I'm just saying, oh, Alvarez sucks. He's terrible. I'm just saying right now, he's lost. He's the worst player on the field right now. He's been the worst player in this series, hands down, in my opinion.
I have a lot of things that are bothering me about Alvarez right now, especially yesterday. They just kind of, like we said, but every bad thing that the Mets have done this year showed up. Like every bad thing that Alvarez has done this year also showed up last night. So I do have like a lot of concerns, but I think it is more so just that overall, like, is Torrens the better option overall? That's up to the pitchers. And for Quintana, he has much, much better numbers with
Yeah.
Alvarez than Torrens. So maybe for Senga, since Senga hasn't really pitched much this year, if you want to start Torrens tomorrow, you can, like
Yeah.
that's fine. But I
It
think
all depends
overall,
what they do tonight.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think overall with Alvarez, like, I wouldn't say he's had ugly defensive moments, but I think particularly yesterday, it's more so an overall problem that also affects his offense. And I talk about it, but it's like the need to be the hero. So
Yeah.
I've talked about this before, and it seems like a throwaway thing, but you have to actually think about it sometimes. He has a tattoo on his neck that says the best. He thinks very highly of himself. He's a very emotional player. He wants to be the hero. He wants to be the MVP. Like he thinks extremely highly of himself. So when there's a ball hit in front of him and he has a chance to, throw it to second and make this amazing double play, he's going for the play at second. Like he's going for the big play. When he comes up with the bases loaded and 1 out, he's not looking for the sac fly. He says, I'm going to try to hit this ball to Los Angeles. And what he ends up doing is the ball flies out of his hands and almost goes into the crowd because he's trying to do too much. He is a very young player, a very emotional player who is trying to do too much. He needs to mature. He needs to develop. And I'm hoping that with more postseason experience, some of this stuff gets cleaned up because there are certain things that he's doing that it can get old. And if you do become truly like home run or nothing, it's not going to matter as much because you could hit your 25 homers, but if there are so many times where you're doing the wrong thing in very easy spots, the home runs don't mean much. He's almost, in some aspects, getting like Pete Alonso with his approach at the plate. And he's trying to just hit the life out of the ball. He's taking these insane hacks at the plate, but he's a player who has so much natural strength that's not necessary. He doesn't need to take these massive swings to generate power. He doesn't have another swing. That's the issue right now. He doesn't have a sacrifice fly approach. He doesn't have a single swing. He only has one swing, and it's to swing at 1,000% and try to make the big play and hit the grand slam. He's never going for the sac fly. He's always going for the grand slam. So that's what I'm concerned about. Like, I understand if you're a power hitter. I told him, I want you to be a power. I want you to pull the ball. But there are certain scenarios where you just need to put bat on ball and just look for the sac fly, cut down on your swing. And if you get a pitch you like, just try to hit it into the air and get a little sac fly. Just get us on the board when you're scoreless and you're trying to mess up the pitcher's momentum and confidence. And you just kind of keep the line moving. He's just really doing too much. He's in between. He's, like I say, he's looking at fastballs on the corner, but he's chasing sliders in the dirt. So there's a lot of stuff that it comes with a 22-year-old that doesn't have much experience. It comes with a young player. It comes with an emotional player, but he does need to improve in a lot of areas, especially from the mental aspect. And, there's things that mechanically could be fixed. I mean, Smoltz talks about all the time. It's a very long swing, about the way he approaches and coming from the shoulder, then back up, and you don't have time for the fastball. He mentioned in his pregame interview that he's struggling with the fastball and he's late on the fastball. So he needs to be earlier with how he's setting up with his front foot. So at least he acknowledges the mistakes that he's making, and he's telling you that he's trying to make adjustments. We'll see if any of it pans out. But I think overall there are some concerns But with how it's been for Torrens, he hasn't played in weeks. That I feel like it's not going to solve the runners left on base issue. If all of a sudden the Dodgers are running wild, then maybe you want to get someone that's throwing guys out. But right now, like you look at some of these guys, Freeman has no leg. Muncie's not going to steal you bags. Will Smith's not running. So it's not one of those situations where you need like your catcher that could just throw guys out. And if the pitchers do much better with Alvarez and they want him to catch, you leave him there. But I think that I just don't want it's not going to happen overnight, though. Like, I mean, maybe if another ball gets hit in front of him, maybe he goes to first this time because of what happened last night, but I wouldn't guarantee it because he's still looking for the highlight play. That's just the kind of personality he has. There are just certain guys that are very emotional like that. And it's something that, again, I hope with the experience improves because it needs to. Because stuff like this, you could only bail out so much with home runs because there are other things that really do need to be cleaned up when it talks about the amount of opportunities that you have and the amount of situations you're in. If you're only coming through in these certain spots here or there, it just doesn't do much overall.
We'll see what happens as his career continues to go through. And again, like I'm not saying that I have, a concern about him long term because eventually I do think he can figure it out because he is a very talented player. But there's so many things that I see from him that I'm just like, what the fuck are you doing, man? Like, what? Why? Like, it's just a lot of why. Like, why is that? Why? You're fun. It's funny that you mentioned that because when you said the best, he wants to be the hero. Then I'm starting to think about Jesse Winker, who wants to be the villain all the time. So, but that's just my ADD mind just floating all around. But as for some other matchups that we can get into, I think that it more has to be expressed with the bullpen, of course, because this is a little bit different of a Dodgers lineup than we are used to. So far in this series, we'll see kind of how they utilize things. Like I said, I don't think you see McGill for the rest of this series. I don't think you'll see him ever again, to be honest. Reed Garrett, I don't think he's available, mainly because of the days of rest. Budo, you'll definitely see tonight. Stanek will be available. I don't know what the deal is with Peterson, but maybe.
No way. They're saving him for Game 5. They have to.
Oh yeah,
they have to save for tomorrow.
That's right. Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, you're definitely going to have a little bit of a short staff tonight. Let's just say that. But Quintana has been really good. Quintana has been good. And I think that the way, if he can connect the dots and find a way to just get outs the way that he's been able to do with balls put in play, he's got to trust the defense here. And even though the defense has not been great, hopefully there's a little bit more emphasis put on that tonight. And that definitely adds a little bit of the flair here with Harrison Bader in center field. That's a lot, that's a lot better, even though Tyrone Taylor looked great in center field, making that incredible play early on in the game. That's definitely a lot better up the middle. We know that Lindor and Iglesias are good up the middle. So we'll see how they work with that. Again, the defense has to be cleaned up, of course. And then, of course, the offense has to show up. I mean, it really does. They did not show up in game 1 or 3, so it's an even game of this series, so it's time to show up. But as for other things in here regarding the bullpen, mapping this out of a potential, because this is not a favorable matchup for a guy like Quintana, even though it's a little bit less of a weighted Dodgers lineup tonight. If there is a 5-inning performance, he can't get out of the 5th inning. I'm not sure where they would possibly go with this, mainly because of what they're trying to save for Senga tomorrow. But I don't know how would you approach this, because I haven't really thought about it as much because I've had other thoughts regarding this series. But I don't know. I really don't know how they could really go by this if you don't really get the length. If you get the same length that you got from Severino last night, let's just say that, they might be in trouble. Not gonna lie.
They'll be in a lot of trouble. I like you said, I think that based off what they have available and what they're saving for tomorrow, they won't be able to get it done. You're hoping that you can get, best case scenario, you get 6. If you get 6 out of Quintana, Mayton's gonna have to be the next man up because of how much Reed worked yesterday. So you're looking at something
Yeah.
like if you have a lead or it's tied or you're down by one after six, you would like to go Maton 7, Static 8, Diaz 9. But it's kind of this thing that we talk about. Let's say you get 5 and 2/3. Okay, now it's an inning and a third of Maton, maybe inning and a third, like kind of what they did in game two, where it's like everyone got like inning and a third or something like that. So I feel like it's going to be those three guys. Those are the three people you're
Yeah.
seeing. Maybe Budo if it's like the volume is really bad. Like I feel like if you get a 4 inning outing, it's Budo, then Maton, then blah blah blah. But I
Yeah.
think that like it all depends on how far Quintana goes. And then if he doesn't go far, you see Budo. If he does, you see the Maton Stanek and Diaz combination.
Yeah, it's things like that where you just kind of scratch your head in the fact of where, I mean, you do have Danny Young still here. Obviously, I keep forgetting that he's even here. I don't even
The
have him
issue,
listed. That's how
this is a
forgetful he
tough
is.
day to use him though because of all the right-handed bats that are out there tonight, especially in the bottom half of
Yeah,
the order. I mean, that 7, 8, 9 is usually a spot where you like to go to him, but with Smith, Paez, and Taylor all being right-handers, even though Taylor doesn't really matter, for the most part, you wouldn't really be doing that. And even if you want to go 9-1 Taylor Otani, like it's just never a good idea to bring an inexperienced pitcher in to face Otani, despite Otani struggles, whether it's against left-handers, bases empty, things like that. And
yeah,
honestly, it's like a guy like Muncy, he's a bad matchup for Dan Young because Muncy doesn't chase. So there is not really a good spot to put Dan Young in, despite how well he pitched in game one. Maybe you save him for tomorrow as well, because it's like if you have a right hander on the mound in Senga, then the Dodgers maybe have a couple more lefty bats in there, and then you could try to find a spot for Young. But again, I think that game tomorrow might be an elimination game for the Mets, where you're not bringing Danny Young an elimination game. So there, you might be pushing Reed a little more, pushing Stanek more, pushing Diaz more, because you have the off day after that, and you might not have another game after that. So you're gonna kind of approach it like that, I would think.
I'd say if you're looking at it from platoons here, overall, like quality, lefties have obviously been worse against Danny Young. Righties have been pretty much almost the same, but like a little bit more power against him. It seems like he walks a lot of right-handed batters.
Yeah.
And again, like
And
we've
the
said
other
with the
thing
bottom
he
part of the
has
order,
too,
like
the
yeah,
other thing he has too against righties that could be an issue is his slider. It breaks into right-handers. Sometimes it's a legitimate back
yeah,
foot slider where it hits the back foot of the hitter.
yeah.
So that's
He's
another
hit
thing that could
7 right-handed batters this year.
exactly. But that's the way his slider breaks. That's why it's good against lefties, but against righties, it's kind of hit or miss. Where like, oh, it's inside pitch that you can't hit, but sometimes it might hit you. So that is definitely a
Yeah.
problem that he has with his slider against the righties.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in regards to that, but I do think he's going to probably be like, let's say Quintana can't even get to the fourth or the fifth. You're probably going to see Danny Young eventually, just to mop this thing up. But again, I think that you just need to see in regards to where, how he's had it set up yesterday, where I said 2 or 3 runs come across from Severino, they were going to win that game. Well, you got to score runs in that in there. So we'll see. What
Yeah,
happened?
quick question. So the Mets, they made the decision to carry one less pitcher because they wanted to get Jeff McNeil
Yeah.
on the roster. Now,
Hmm.
McNeil, he's pinch hit a couple times, it hasn't looked good. Acuna, we haven't seen much of him. With how this series has gone on, with burning McGill and saving Peterson and saving Budo for like the Senga game,
Yeah.
would there be consideration to maybe send down an Acuna or a McNeil to get another arm up here? I know you don't want to go to Otto or Brazaban, but just to have another arm, can you
I
do that? Are
guess.
you allowed
Yeah.
to make those transactions mid-series? I feel like you should be able to.
I have no clue. I don't know. It all really has to do with eligibility, I think, probably. Like whoever's on the 40-man, because like they have guys who are on the 40-man, like they have those guys that are there. They're there with them. So we'll see what happens there, but it's gonna be weird. Let's just say that. It's gonna be weird how they kind of piece this thing together if you don't get distance from somebody like Jose Quintana today, who, even though he has been good, again, we've talked about this just not being a favorable matchup, and that is definitely one of the keys I have to this game, and I do want to pull those up now of Carson's keys to Game 4 here, and one is to one part of the team, and one is in different directions. Let's just say that, and I will list them off here and put them here. Number one is very, very easy, basically learning from mistakes from last night. The barrel window. Now, Mets fans last night, even though we got absolutely crushed, were definitely very busy asking why the Dodgers fly balls were leaving the park and the Mets were dying on the warning track. Answer is very simple. The Dodgers pulled the baseball, the Mets didn't. You are playing at Citi Field right now, a known pitcher's ballpark in cold weather in the middle of October. The ball is not going to launch out of the park just by hitting it hard. Walker Buehler gave this team, like I said, so many pitches to pull last night, and they decided to either stare at them or just smack them into Death Valley on the warning track. Do not make the same mistake again. The pull side is your friend in cold weather. Use it. Now, how do they use that? Well, that brings into key number 2. By profile, Yoshinobu Yamamoto has the 5th worst graded fastball among starting pitchers per Stuff Plus at a 40% usage. He has thrown the 6th most fastballs across the middle third of the plate this season. His plus command makes up for it at times, but it does not prevent the QOC level of vulnerability. Hitters have a 366 expected weighted on base average and a 45.6% hard hit rate against Yamamoto's fastball this year. With a 40% usage, the Mets are going to have plenty of chances to do damage early on in the count. When he challenged you with velocity, accept the challenge. And as for Jose Quintana, the key to him is attack and manage, like I said. Against a Dodgers team that does not chase much, like we said, Jose Quintana could be vulnerable in this matchup. It's very possible. The only way that he can work around being overmatched, in Quintana's case, that would have to be contact management. This might require some nibbling around the strike zone, but Quintana needs to be at A+ level tonight with his command to keep us in this game. Although he has had struggles with the home run ball this year, Jose Quintana owns the 9th lowest batting average on balls in play versus right-handed hitters this season, and he also owns the 12th lowest BABIP versus left-handed hitters this season. It's pretty simple. It's easier said than done, but Quintana needs to locate, he needs to keep the ball in the ballpark, and he needs to trust his defense. The swing, miss, and chase is not a viable option against this lineup. Now, I do want to do a little bit of a rundown of Yoshinobu Yamamoto because I think we know, what we're dealing with here because we did scout him all off season. But in terms of these just keys in general, Frank, I'll go to you if there's anything you want to add regarding what they can do here to scratch out a win against a really good Dodgers team, even with Freddie Freeman not in the lineup.
I think from the offensive standpoint, the point you mentioned about the fastballs is really important. And the reason why it stands out to me is that it's Yamamoto's most used pitch with a 40% usage. So it's a really bad fastball, but you're going to see it a lot. So if you're in the box, sit on it. You're going to see it. So if you see it, hit it. And like you mentioned, pull it. Do not try to go opposite field in Citi Field in cold weather. It's just not going to work out for you. And you have guys that can pull baseballs and do it successfully. I love to see Marte's first postseason home run and pull one. Obviously, Alonso, pull it. Lindor, Alvarez, obviously. Like, there's so many guys. Martinez even. Like, how to pull a baseball. I mean, you got to this point. Like, these are professional hitters. Like, if you see that bad fastball and it's over the middle of the plate, I want you to really crush it. So, I do want to see them have, finally, again, I don't think it's going to happen overnight. They've gotten to this point with the approach that they've used. But once again, that approach of be aggressive early, do not fall behind, and then chase at that curveball that you're going to see. You want to be aggressive with the early fastballs and try to make the most out of it. So that's what I'm looking at most offensively. And then, like we said with Quintana, it's really going to be a tightrope that he's walking with his pitch style, the offense that he's facing. But again, like we always talk about, every game for me, my one key that I always have, never walk the bottom half of the order against this Dodgers team. You never should do it in general, but against the Dodgers team, even more so. There's a more point of emphasis, especially when Chris Taylor's batting ninth. Like I said, my number one key is do not walk Chris Taylor. Do not put extra guys on base for Ohtani. I know Mookie has not done well this series. I know Teoscar has not done well this series, but these guys are just too good hitters with too proven of a pedigree to just be totally silent. Like these guys, I mean, for the Mets fans that didn't really watch much of the series, but they were really good against the Padres. Like Teoscar was hitting massive home runs. Mookie Betts was hitting plenty of home runs. It's not like these guys have had bad postseasons. Even though they've had a bad series, the overall postseason hasn't been bad. So just because they haven't done well in this series doesn't mean that, oh, well, we could just walk guys and face Betts and Teoscar. Oh, no problem. Like at any moment, they could break out and strike. So you still have to be very careful with those guys. So that's why it's more point of emphasis, attack Pages, attack Taylor, and then you see what happens with the top half of the order. And then with Tommy Edman, I didn't get to mention, but we talked about trying to not show the velocity. Tommy Edman is a guy that takes. So for Quintana, it's don't throw fastballs, but with your secondary pitches, try to get them over for strikes because he's not going to chase it. It doesn't mean that because he's hitting fastballs, really just throw him curveballs in the dirt, just don't change it in the dirt because they're just going to walk them and then set up Max Muncy, who's also not going to chase. So it's up Kike Hernandez, who's looking to make a big play happen. So it's a matter of get your changeup over, but keep them off balance, like we said with the curveballs and everything like that, and just kind of see how that goes.
Yeah, I don't want to see Tommy Edman facing any velocity whatsoever, especially when he's in the cleanup spot. If he's in these RBI chances, I mean, should not be challenging him that way. You should we shouldn't even be talking about this in regards to a guy like Tommy Edman. Now, when it comes to Yoshinobu Yamamoto, we talked about his fastball just for a second there. I do want to give a little bit of a rundown on him. Even though the main reason why I saved this to the end here is because we already really know the deal with Yoshinobu Yamamoto. We've talked about him a lot throughout this entire offseason. But I do want to do a little bit of a rundown in the sense of, what to expect besides that fastball that is not graded out very well. But he does have really good command, so that's definitely going to be a theme when talking about a guy like Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Now, for those of you who don't know, he is a 6-pitch right-hander. He does have a 7th pitch, which I don't think that he uses anymore. 40% fastball, like we said. 24% splitter, 23% curveball, 6% cutter, 3% slider, and 3% sinker. His best graded pitch is not his fastball, like we said. It is his splitter. It sits 90 to 91, tops 93. About 31 inches of vertical fade, which is more like drop, but fade in the sense of that it has low spin. And, of course, the grades 121 stuff plus, 112 command plus, and a 119 pitching plus. The rest of the arsenal, he has the high 90s gyro action fastball. Like we said, it tops 98, 16 inches of induced vertical break. Heavy spin curveball with RPMs over 2,700. He has a hard arm side cutter, which you can also say is a slider, but he also has an active spin slider because they have very similar characteristics. Now, as for some other notes here, we do know that he spent about 3 months on the injured list this season due to multiple upper body issues, triceps, shoulder, very similar actually to what Senga went through this year in regards to the tricep tightness. And of course, with that 5'10 frame, he throws it throws from a very high and deliberate arm slot with great command. He excels at setting up chases and whiffs in 2-strike counts. The splitter and curveball have been pretty much most responsible for about 65 to 70% of the swings and misses against hitters this season. He does have reverse splits, as we said. Mendoza definitely made an emphasis on that. Right-handed hitters have a 744 OPS versus Yamamoto. Not to mention he's given up 30 extra base hits this season in 90 innings. 23 of them have been against right-handed hitters. And, of course, the last time that the Mets faced him in May, it didn't go great for him. Six innings pitched, seven hits, 4 earned runs, 1 walk, 9 strikeouts, which, I'm not going to lie, that sounds a bit off because I feel like they hit a little bit better against him. didn't they?
It was like they got off to a good start, but it really wasn't like this blowout.
Yeah, okay.
They like I feel like it was one of those games where like they
Shota
got hits.
Imanaga was the one who they destroyed.
Imanaga against the
They
Cubs in
destroyed
Wrigley,
Imanaga.
they did
Yeah.
really good. But against Yamamoto, I think that was one of those games where they actually stranded a lot of runners, and it was one of those games where they were getting to him early, and then he got into a groove. If I remember that start in Los Angeles correctly.
Yeah. So we'll see what again. We know that the Dodgers series back in LA, that was one of the turning
In
points
May or
to,
April, even
yeah,
the one in Los Angeles, I think was in April.
one of the turning points of the season when Alvarez went down, and then it all just kind of went down on a spiral, and then the Dodgers series in Citi Field, and then Grimace comes, and the rest is history. But you know, when it comes to Yoshinobu Yamamoto, he's had his struggles. He's still a very talented pitcher. He hasn't been amazing. He had a really tough debut against the Padres, and then he came back and had a really good game. I think it was in Game 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was in Game 5, the winner-go-home game, and he pitched really well. So you might not get very much volume from him. Maybe you get 5 or 6 innings from him. It all depends on if you allow him to get into a groove. But like we said with this fastball, it's not great. It has some decent shape here and then. He has good command of his pitches. But the fastball is definitely not as effective as compared to the rest of his secondary stuff. So attack him. And they were able to do that easy enough. Let's just say that last time. So, you know, the game plan should not change from then. But this staring at pitches where you just see, like, it's just enough already. This team has such a ridiculous fetish for getting into 2-strike counts. It's just no way to, it's no way to produce an efficient offense in this game. It just can't happen, because then they put you in a really vulnerable state. I mean, you're not going to get full counts every single time, especially against a Dodgers team that works very quick and throws a lot of strikes. You got to take some kind of initiative here. I mean, you really do. And this lethargic staring at 2 strikes is the main reason as to why I can't stand Eric Chavez and why I need him gone no matter what they do this year. But when it comes to the overall offensive approach, it's pretty simple. He's going to challenge you and accept that challenge. Stop waiting for things to happen. Stop waiting for walks. Stop looking for that. And have competitive ABs. The Mets were having competitive ABs last night. And then they got everybody into runners in scoring position. They're just like, oh, let's just swing at everything. Let's just stare at everything. It's enough already. Enough already. Clean it up. And maybe they can do it in back-to-back games. That would be nice. Because then if they do it in back-to-back games, there's a possibility that they could go to the World Series. Because they're going to have to win back-to-back games if they win this series. It's going to have to happen somehow. And it starts with this offensive approach getting cleaned up and them actually waking up offensively. Anything else that you want to add regarding?
So when it comes to Yamamoto, you mentioned he made 2 postseason starts. And one of the things that I find interesting to note, in particular for tonight's start, is that both of those starts he made were at Los Angeles. So this is going to be his first road playoff start. And one thing to consider is that even though he's a guy who, you look at his age, you're like, oh, he's a veteran pitcher. Still technically his rookie year in the MLB. It's still technically his first MLB postseason. So this is first major league postseason road start. And the Citi Field crowd, the Mets need their help. You know, the Mets really need a very passionate, loud Citi Field crowd to maybe try to get into Yamamoto's head a little bit, maybe make him a little nervous, to hopefully he makes some more mistake pitches, maybe lose the zone a little bit, and they could have some success. The one thing that Yamamoto has not done well this year is limiting that hard contact. He is a guy that he can give up the barrels. He can have a high hard hit rate. And when you look at the pitch breakdown, like you were talking about, some of these pitches really could hang out over the middle. I mean, whether it is the 4-seam fastball,
See that curveball?
I'll get to the curveball at the end. Even the splitter, sometimes it could hang middle. So every now and then, be careful for a hanging splitter. Even his slider, it does not break. It does not have the same like vertical drop that a lot of these sliders the Mets struggle with has. It's something that every now and then ends up on that middle quadrant, a little bit away. But as far as like some of his other pitches, like the sinker, it's mostly like up and in. Even his cutter, like that could bleed over the plate a little bit too, but more so like on the high side. But the big key, once again, is the curveball away in the dirt. We saw it with Flaherty. We saw it with Bueller. Yamamoto has one too. And like you said, it spins. So it's the same thing. It's literally the same approach of he's going to show you the fastball early. It's going to be over the plate. If he gets ahead on you, he's going to that curveball down in the dirt, which is what he did in the last start against the Mets. Once he got into that groove, they were just swinging at that curveball in the dirt. So you got to, again, you have to, what's coming. You know what I mean? It's like his blueprint is right there. You know what's going to happen. So change the approach. It's like we said of like, you want to stick righty, right, left, all this other stuff. But it's like, if you know what a certain pitcher does, use it to your advantage. Like this is the game plan on him. So I do want to see, like you said, I want to see a different approach tonight because it's almost do or die time because some mentioned earlier, but the Mets really need to treat this game very serious because going down 3-1 and then you're going to have the Senga bullpen game, which we have no idea how it's going to go. And then Los Angeles right behind it. This series gets way tougher if they lose tonight. If they win tonight, we have a shot. If we don't win tonight, it's probably game over. So this is a game that if you're going to change your approach for once, if you're going to be aggressive, tonight is the night to do it. Tonight is the night to be aggressive early. That doesn't mean, like you said, that doesn't mean swing at everything. That doesn't mean that when runners get on base, just be going crazy. But you have to be smart of being aggressive early. If all of a sudden you see he's losing the zone, then okay, you could stay, just let him again, stop bailing these pitchers out. That's been the issue that we've seen a lot. Stop bailing them out. If they get into trouble, the pressure is on them. Let them work their way out of it. Make them beat you. Don't beat yourself. I mean, that has been something that keeps happening over and over, and that has got to stop.
Yeah. Another thing that I do want to add here, we have had a lot of scouts in Japan talk about him in big games not doing well the way that compared to guys like Senga and guys like Shota Imanaga, and even Yuki Matsui, who's a closer. But when it comes to with him on the road, it seems like he's pitched better on the road as compared to Dodger Stadium this year. Again, we don't know about this environment. Like that's just a little bit of a factor that you can put in here. But again, this is it. I mean, they're gonna have to. Again, we're gonna have to find a way to just string these good ABs together because we know they can do it. We've seen them do it before. But the fact that it's on a level of, well, it's either 0 or 100, it's not going to cut it against a Dodgers team like this that can take advantage of all of your weaknesses. Yuki saying, you said my name. Yep. What's up? I'm sure you're sitting home right now because he's with the Padres, right? But we're trying to take care of them, but they're a really tough team. Let's just say that. But as for all of these other things that we can just add in here, little things going on here. It looks like the Temptations will be performing My Girl for Lindor. I guess it's going to be
tomorrow
every time he comes up. Tomorrow?
No, yeah, I think it's tomorrow.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Well, no, I think what it says they're going to do is they're going to do the national anthem and then sing the song before the game, and then the game will commence. I don't think there's going to be like actual like stuff going on during the game as the doors back.
just have a quartet right next to the Apple up there, just singing when he comes up. That would just be
honestly.
That would be such a Mets thing.
I know they want to celebrate the history and everything, but if tonight doesn't go well, we might have to scrap Harvey and get Grimace on that mountain because we need to change some things up here.
Yeah, we might have to. Might have to go desperation. I'm not going to lie. We know that it only makes sense that if they do go to the World Series, it's going to be Grimace that throws out a first pitch. We know that that's going to happen, but we're going to have to get there. As for some news that also just came in from Andy Martino, so take it as you will, of course. The Mets are preparing Kodai Senga to start Game 5 of the NLCS on Friday, but word around the team is that David Peterson could, in fact, get the assignment if he is not needed in relief in Game 4. So if they don't use him tonight, he could start Game 5 tomorrow. Peterson.
My bigger question is, has Senga's mechanics thing been fixed? Because that's what it comes down to me. If Senga said, okay, my mechanics are good now, I'll let you go out there. But if you say, I'm still struggling, forget it. Like, don't even bother. Let's not even go down that road. Let's not put ourselves in the hole. Go figure it out. Like, we're not doing this
Yeah.
again. I don't want excuses. I do not want to
Yeah.
hear the mechanics excuse again, because if I hear it again, I'm going to be absolutely livid. So if he has his stuff sorted out, go for it. If not, no, thank you.
Yeah, obviously there's a lot that's riding on this, of course, because it's deeper in the series, of course, and we need him to set the tone like the ace he has been so far in his Mets career. That was possibly the worst outing we've ever seen him pitch ever. I mean, that was awful. So hopefully it's a lot different there. But it seems like they want to be in a position where they don't have to use David Peterson, and they're going to put David Peterson on the mound for Game 5, which, again, he has been very reliable, but also he has not pitched well in his last few outings either. So there's a little bit of concern as to riding the hot hand right now of who would pitch Game 5. But it all has to play out. Like we said, this is the pivotal Game 4. This is the middle of a 7-game series, and that's how decisions are going to be made. So that's kind of how I look at it. I'm trying to see if there's any other stories we can bring up that has not been said yet. Let's see. Yeah, Edgardo Alfonso is there because he's throwing at the first pitch with Ventura, right? So, let's see if there's anything else. I don't think that there is. Anything that we want to add? Alex Rodriguez with Alex Cohen. Yeah, don't really care. But yeah, and the last thing I want to say, Harrison Bader is making a postseason start before Jeff McNeil ever does. Just want to put that out there. I don't think I said it yet. I just find that hilarious. Anyways, last message that you want to put out there before we kick off this game, Frank. I know that last night was not fun, so let's hope it's better.
Exactly. Yeah, don't do that again. That was torture. That was absolutely pain. Don't do that again. We did in Game 1. I was like, okay, we got out the way. I thought Game 2 we were fine. Then Game 3 we just want to just not know how to play the game of baseball. So do good things. Like, play the game the right way. Don't strand runners. Don't drop the ball. Don't throw the ball down the middle of the team and give up home runs. Like, do the basics. I mean, that's all I ask for. Like, at bare minimum, do the basics. Don't do dumb stuff. Yeah. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And listen, Mr. Harrison Bader, you want to prove me wrong? You want to get a big hit for me tonight? Do you want to hit one over the wall? Please? Could you do that? Thank you.
Playoff Bader. Who's ready for Playoff Bader?
We need it.
Tune in for Playoff Bader. It's about 10 to 15 minutes away. And we're going to hop off here. For those of you who tuned in to our pregame show, make sure to tune into our post-game show. I do have a special guest joining me. This time, I'm hoping that that special guest comes through. Things happen. It's whatever. But this is definitely a special guest that I know that you guys would like if he comes in here. He's been on our show before, and it's always a fun time hanging out with him. But other than that, make sure to hit the subscribe button if you hadn't already. Turn on post notifications, of course, to not miss content throughout all of the postseason, of course, which is our pregame shows and our postgame shows. Our audio, of course, goes out at 9 a.m. It went out a little bit later than it should because I had a little technical difficulties with it last night. But as for other things, follow us on Twitter, TikTok, all of us individually as well. Links in the description, including Andrew, our third mic, who has been feeling better. He'll be back before you guys know it, but he still needs a few days to recover from his what was it? It was a forklift accident? He did something. He had a very very manly injury. Let's just say that. And it definitely was not made up. Anyways. Mets are looking to tie this series tonight. Let's hope that they play a better baseball game than they did in Game 3 because it was absolutely awful. This is now an even game at the pace that they were going, so it's time for them to play good baseball and tie this series up, and go into Game 5 with this series tied once again for a whole new series. Folks, thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you guys tonight after the game. Enjoy the game. Enjoy playoff baseball. Enjoy the postseason atmosphere. Let's hope it doesn't die out like it did last night. But let's go Mets, and we will see you guys next time.